This is a picture of three priests seen in countless books. Three simple priests. They were among those who advocated for the secularization of Filipino parishes through peaceful means, but were unjustly targeted and falsely accused by Spanish authorities as the masterminds of a larger scandal, and even falsely testified against by their fellow Filipino, leading to their execution in one of the most painful ways possible. Who were the Gomburza? What led to their execution? And how did their actions and fate contribute to the many factors inspiring the downfall of Spain's control over the Philippines? I'm Jonas, and let's talk about the bitterly tragic lives of the Gomburza. For over 300 years, the Philippines endured severe Spanish colonial rule. What began as an expedition led by Ferdinand Magellan in 1521 soon transformed into a system of exploitation and oppression. The Spanish saw the islands as a source of resources rather than a homeland for its people. The native Filipinos suffered discrimination, forced labor, and unequal treatment under Spanish-imposed laws. This led to a widespread resentment among the Filipinos, sparking numerous revolutions and resistances over the years, including the Gomburza, which compared to earlier revolts aimed for a peaceful reform. The Gomburza is made up of three priests, Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, who all lived in the mid-1800s. They were not just religious figures, but intellectuals who fought for Filipino rights and secularization. Mariano Gomez, the eldest of the three, was born in Santa Cruz, Manila in 1799. He was deeply devoted to his parishioners and critically opposed Spanish abuses while serving as head priest of Bacoor, Cavite. He openly criticized these abuses and contributed to publications like the newspaper La Verdad. Jose Burgos was born in Vigan, Ilocos Sur in 1837, who came from a prominent Spanish lineage and excelled in philosophy, theology, and canon law. Burgos' influence extended beyond the Philippines, like during the inauguration of the Governor-General Carlos Maria de la Torre. Burgos was honored to seat next to him, which is typically reserved for the Archbishop. Jacinto Zamora was born in Pandacan, Manila in 1835, was known for his dedication as a priest. He served in various parishes, demonstrating strong administrative skills and pastoral care, despite also being known for his enthusiasm for gambling. However, Gomburza, along with many Filipino priests, angered Spanish authorities by advocating for equal rights and resisting the dominance of Spanish friars in the Philippine religious affairs. Specifically, they advocated for secularization, aiming to reduce Spanish friar control over Philippine parishes and grant more independence to Filipino priests to manage churches in their own homeland. Essentially, to give Filipino priests more control over religious activities in the Philippines. However, this seriously threatened the established power structure in the Catholic churches in the Philippines, which had been firmly established by the Spaniards for over 3 centuries, making Filipino priests who participated, not just the Gomburza, as targets. It's worth noting that an earlier uprising against Spain was led by a man who called himself Hermano Pule, a Filipino religious leader who at first wanted to become a priest but was rejected by the Spanish friars from priesthood many years ago. And during that time, Governor-General Carlos Maria de la Torre arrived, serving from 1869 to 1871. He was seen as a liberal reformer, which gave hope to Filipino intellectuals and priests like the Gomburza. They hoped they could push for changes because he was more open to listening and discussing their ideas. However, his time in office didn't last long. When his successor, Rafael de Izquierdo, took over, he brought back conservative policies that favored the Spanish friars. This move made things harder for Filipino priests and intellectuals who wanted reforms and equal treatment, and things were about to get worse for the Gomburza. On January 20, 1872, a planned attack took place at the Fort San Felipe in Cavite, known as the Cavite Mutiny. It involved approximately 200 Filipino soldiers and laborers who were fed up with the harsh working conditions. This mutiny began when Filipino workers at the Cavite Arsenal saw that their wages were cut and lost privileges such as exemption from tributo or tax and polo y servicio or forced labor without pay. Just imagine working without a salary and still having to pay taxes with it. Though it started as a local issue, Spanish authorities perceived it as a part of a larger conspiracy against them and possibly the entire Spanish Empire. The mutineers scavenged whatever weapons they can find, but they were lacking in coordination and strategy, which meant that they were not able to sustain their attacks. The Spanish forces then quickly overwhelmed them, and the uprising ended in total disaster. The next morning, many of the soldiers involved were executed, and after the Cavite Mutiny, Spanish authorities needed someone to blame for organizing the uprising, someone to be held accountable. And seeing that these priests had some influence over many Filipinos due to their advocacies, they swiftly arrested Mariano Gomez and Jose Burgos while they were going about their day-to-day tasks. Jacinto Zamora, despite having minimal interaction with the two, was also arrested, surprising all three and those around them. These men were arrested with little to no evidence against them and put on trial. Although the trial struggled to prove that the three were responsible for the mutiny, a witness named Francisco Zaldua came forward. Zaldua, who was coerced and under immense pressure and watchful eyes of the Spanish authorities, and with promises of leniency or simply a reduction in his sentence, he falsely testified, accusing the Gomburza of planning the Cavite Mutiny. This testimony was all the judges needed to sentence them to death by one of the most painful execution devices in history, the garrote. However, this trial of the Gomburza is highly believed to be predetermined. On February 17, 1872, a solemn procession led Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora and the witness Francisco Zaldua to their execution at Bagong Bayan. Unfortunately for Zaldua, despite being promised freedom if he testified against the Gomburza, he was also to be executed that day. Zaldua was dragged to the garrote and executed first. The atmosphere was then charged with tension and sorrow as the condemned priests faced their fate. Gomez, the eldest of the three, faced his fate calmly. The crowd fell silent as he walked to his seat, silently accepting his fate and delivering a final sermon, saying, "Let us go where the leaves never fall and move without the will of God." Zamora was next in line at the garrote, but he appeared lifeless as he was dragged to the execution site. In their prison cell before their execution, Zamora's mental state had already broken down. It seemed he had already lost his mind, looking dead even before the garrote killed him. Burgos, known for his fiery spirit and steadfast beliefs, was executed last. As he was being positioned to the chair where many others have died before him, he shocked the crowd by suddenly standing and proclaiming his innocence, saying, "What crime have I committed to deserve such a death? Is there no justice in the world?" The Spanish friars on the platform then pushed him back to his seat, but he rose up once again, exclaiming that he had done nothing wrong. But eventually, he was subdued by a Spanish priest who likened his situation to that of Christ himself, saying even Christ himself was innocent. While seated on his chair, his executioner approached him from behind and asked for his forgiveness before returning to his station. Despite Burgos's passionate defense, he eventually gave in, and the garrote silenced him forever. While the Gomburza's execution was intended to intimidate the Filipinos into submission, it instead sparked an outrage and unity among the Filipino people. We could say that the Spaniards' plans backfired as the circumstances turned against them, tarnishing the image and reputation of Spanish friars even to this day. The martyrdom of the Gomburza had a profound impact on Philippine history, inspiring future generations to fight for freedom and justice. Their sacrifices became a symbol of reform and resistance against Spanish oppression. Jose Rizal, a key figure in Philippine history, dedicated his novel El Filibusterismo to their memory. This event further fueled the Filipino discontent with Spanish rule and contributing to setting the stage for the Philippine Revolution of 1896.